A 4.0 magnitude aftershock has rocked parts of the Northeast just hours after the region was shaken by a rare 4.8 magnitude earthquake. Take a look at this EarthCam video of the New York City skyline. The quake Friday morning was felt across at least 10 states in the mid-Atlantic. JFK and Newark airports were forced to temporarily ground flights while crews checked for any damage or debris. CBS News national correspondent Errol Barnett has more.
It was the major shake that caused a morning shock to most of the Northeast. The epicenter of a magnitude 4.8 earthquake just 50 miles west of New York City in Lebanon, New Jersey.
I've never felt an earthquake, so it was a little scary. It was a little weird.
Is that an earthquake?
The power of the quake split this road in Union, ruptured a water main in nearby Chester, and forced the evacuations of families in Newark after their homes were deemed unsafe. Students at Fair Lawn High took shelter in campus hallways.
This is one of the largest earthquakes on the East Coast occur in the last century.
The earthquake hit New York City as well, which has more than 1 million buildings.
We saw the buildings moving and everything, though. It was kind of scary.
Cameras showing center field at Yankee Stadium bounced during batting practice, and the Statue of Liberty's live camera rocked. And while New York's governor says there were no reports of significant damage, she warned the threat may not be over.
If there is an aftershock, people are encouraged to drop and to cover.
Major earthquakes in the northeast of the U.S. are rare, the last one occurring in 2011 at a 5.8 magnitude. It was felt from Florida to Maine. New Jersey sits in the Ramapo Fault Zone, which stretches from Pennsylvania to New York. It is one of the longest fault zones in the region.
We know that after a large earthquake, or even a moderate earthquake, that it causes this change in the stresses on the faults. And so we typically see more earthquakes after the first one.
And Errol joins me now. Errol, it seems like the new greeting among New Yorkers is, did you feel it? So I'm going to pose that question to you. Did you feel it? Did you feel the aftershocks? And how are people around you reacting?
Hey there, Lana. Great to see you. Yes, I did feel it. But here's what's interesting. I think my wife and I are a great example of the range of reactions people have. I thought it was similar to a truck moving by our apartment building and something quite typical. She, seated in one place and seeing lamps move and pictures wobble, was really unnerved by it and was certain that it was a sustained earthquake, and she was a bit more unnerved by it than I was. And I think what's happening right now in the New York metro area is there is this collective sigh of relief because there does not appear to be any injuries or major damage from the quake. But northern New Jersey, as you saw in that story, really got the brunt of the punch of this thing with the epicenter under northern New Jersey at that Ramapo fault line. There are some historic buildings there that experienced some damage. There were roads that had some cracks, a water main broke, and it could have been much worse. I'll also share with you, I was worried early this morning that anyone in the middle of a sensitive surgery perhaps would experience some adverse effects. There are reports from the Philly Inquirer that a man outside of Philadelphia was in the middle of his vasectomy when this earthquake hit, and it was so powerful. This quake was felt from Philadelphia to Maine, and they had to stop the procedure as the room started to shake. He has since said that they finished the procedure and he's fine, but city inspectors are still checking everything out here, looking at critical infrastructure just to make sure there aren't any hidden fractures or damage that we can't see with the naked eye.
Yeah, that is a dramatic story, my friend. So I'm glad to know that he is okay and that it sounds like everybody else is. And given that we're not really used to a lot of seismic activity out here, it was really stunning seeing some of those images in your reporting of people whose homes had to be evacuated from their homes, some of that damage. What can you tell us about how those people will be affected and when they may be able to return home?
Yeah, I think that as we go into the evening, from what I've seen, no reports of gas leaks have been confirmed. People who have been evacuated from buildings, that was just as a precaution. They've been able to return, but within just the past hour or so, we did feel one of these aftershocks. Its preliminary magnitude is 4.0, and the governor was warning everybody in New York State that you very well may experience aftershocks. The U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, says that statistically speaking, within the next week, there's a high probability of a magnitude 3.0 or 4.0 quake. And so as inspectors look at the Brooklyn Bridge behind me and tunnels, and they look for these hidden fractures and fissures, those aftershocks, while not causing any widespread destruction, can be damaging on the small scale. And this is the most densely populated part of the country. And so people are moving in and out frequently. So we'll certainly watch closely to make sure there's no extended damage from this quake. But boy, it woke a lot of people up in the Northeast today with the earth moving under your feet.
Absolutely. I know you can appreciate. I thought that it was the construction that was happening in my apartment. Errol, thank you.
I bet you did. That's right. You got it.
This is video from inside a home in Lebanon, New Jersey, right at the epicenter of that magnitude 4.8 earthquake. We want to bring in now Susan Huff. She's a geophysicist at the USGS Earthquake Hazards Program. Great to have you with us. So, Susan, how rare is an earthquake of this magnitude in this area?
Well, I've been saying that they're uncommon but not unheard of, that you do get a spattering of moderate earthquakes along the Atlantic seaboard, including New York and New Jersey. They just don't happen every day. So if you go back to the 1800s, there have been a couple of earthquakes close to magnitude 5, close to New York City. So they do happen.
So they do happen, but more history is spanned trying to get back to the last time that really happened. We're familiar with fault lines out on the West Coast. Tell us what's happening below the Earth's surface here in New York and New Jersey that caused this.
Sure. Well, the East Coast is different from the West. Out West, you have a plate boundary. You have the Pacific plate that's moving relative to the North America plate. They move about as fast as your fingernails grow, and that gives you the active earthquake zone in California and the West. In the East, you have the continent and the ocean, but they're sort of glued together. They're not moving relative to each other. There's no active fault that's separating them. It's what we call a passive margin. But there are fault lines everywhere in the crust. There's a lot of old faults. And North America is sort of being squeezed in general in a large-scale sense because there's spreading going on along the mid-Atlantic ridge. So there's magma coming up. It's creating new seafloor. It's pushing North America apart from Europe. And you're squeezing the North America continent. So it's a source of stress. And it does give rise to these moderate earthquakes, sometimes larger earthquakes. We've seen them at different places along the East Coast, including Charleston, South Carolina in 1886, Grand Banks, Newfoundland in 1929. So we know that larger earthquakes are possible.
I love that detail about how quickly our fingernails grow and the plates out on the West Coast. As we're talking about the differences, though, between the West Coast and the East Coast, I'm wondering if earthquakes on the East Coast are felt differently than those on the West.
Yeah, so absolutely. It's been well known that because the crust is different, it's older in the East, it's colder, it's more homogeneous. So once you have an earthquake, the waves just travel along a lot more efficiently than they do in California, where you have much younger and more complicated terrains. So a 4.8 in California isn't going to be felt nearly as far as one in the East.
That's fascinating. Well, thank you so much, Susan Hough. We appreciate you.
Thank you.